Welcome, dirty peasants, to episode 79 of Wartwood Gazette, the Amphibia podcast. This week, it'll be our Season 2A retrospective of Amphibia. I'm your host, Nabaticon, and join me today we have Pickle,
Hey guys.
Impact,
Yo, what's good, everybody?
and Nick.
Yo.
Alright, thanks guys for coming on. No news this week. Maybe next recording, hopefully. Last time we kind of finished our season 1 retrospective and coverage. So not coverage, our season 1 retrospectives. And now we're just going to get into season 2. So Impact was smart enough to kind of like lay out the the layout of 2A for us last night. Much appreciated. So we're going to kind of structure this by the trip to Utopia, followed by Sasha and Grime stuff, Marcy at the Gates, our introduction to Marcy, and in the player's time in Utopia, the Utopia arc, and then we'll kind of get into a little bit the end of 2A and closing thoughts. So, I guess if you can see the thumbnail for this week, it's like and the planners and the flagon like staring off into the valley. I wanted to choose this one because for those of you who were around or weren't around the end of season 1, at the San Diego Comic Con 2019 panel, Matt revealed like the concept art for season 2, art by Ian Worrell, I think. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. But it was like a very similar kind of like shot of like and the planners like staring off into the valley and like the journey ahead, and that was kind of like that's kind of what got us like hyped for season 2 for a long time during that hiatus, and we kind of knew very early on that we were going to be leaving the valley like very early in the season. Aside from that, is there any other backstory, Nick, that we need to provide before we kind of like go into the episodes?
I don't think there is, right? I mean,
Okay.
besides like the obvious Marcy and Sasha setup, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. And I think I remember we didn't actually get the trailer, the season 2 trailer first. We got like a TV spot
Oh yeah.
for I think like the first 2 or 3 episodes of the show with like very like quick clips like put together for like a Disney Channel ad. And then a couple of days later, that's when we got like the full like the official trailer um for season 2, and that kind of like covered, surprisingly, like it didn't show too much. It like covered everything up until Marcy at the Gates, which is great. Um, okay, I think now I can kind of like go into the episodes. Um, oh, okay, yeah. Someone, yeah, Chuck posted like the picture in the chat, and like they had Utopia out in the distance.
Wow. Oh man. What he's saying,
It
but
really is at that shot exactly.
that really was an amazing poster. Like that was all we had. But okay, let's not go too deep into the nostalgia. Let's do this. Let's do this.
Yeah, I just love how we got like an early shot the flagon, and
Yeah.
the Utopia design, the concept art was based on, or this was kind of like the general like design for Utopia even back in Fiddle Me This in season 1. So it was nice to see it kind of carry over. Um, oh, whoops! I kind of started the video by accident. The chat. Um, it has
Wait,
a.
I gotta. Oh, sorry. Then.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. Impact.
Oh, I was gonna change the subject a little bit. I was gonna keep it to it, but like, I wasn't there at the time, but I'm pretty sure like Marcy was intentionally hidden throughout most of the advertisement, right? Like y'all didn't see her until we got at Marcy at the gates, right? Or like no snippet of like her specifically, right? Or-
Yeah, Marcy was such like a hyped but also like mysterious character. Her design wasn't even finalized when they put the poster out. Like if you look at the season 2 poster, she still has a brown cape rather than the blue one that they eventually went with,
Oh,
which is
really?
interesting. Yeah.
I didn't even notice that.
I mean that or it's weird lighting, but I'm pretty sure it's just that the design hadn't been finalized. Oh yeah, there it is.
Huh. Okay.
Oh, you guys are talking about the I think this is the New York Comic Con poster.
Um
Okay, yeah, this shot drive everyone nuts. This was like this was like in October of 2019, I think. And then like the first Fwygen poster was like in
That's
like
crazy.
I think July or August. Yeah, it was August 2019 because I remember I was like on a trip that time when it was coming out.
So crazy. I mean, it's like,
4 years ago.
uh, wait, really?
Yeah.
The hell? Where's the time gone? The hell? 4 years? That's insane. Turning into old, and I can't even say I'm turning into old man. It's only 4 years. That's so crazy. Uh,
And
Still
then
pretty cool. I guess they really did figure out what they wanted. Well, I don't. I get you can't, but you can. We can't say they fully did, but like that laser tower. You know what I mean? That's always just sort of been there in the design philosophy. Like you just know it was definitely, I don't know, maybe they were inspired by something Matt was like, okay, I absolutely need this in my show, and then they did it.
I always knew that tower was gonna do something. I was so sure.
oh, and Chuck also posted like the second artwork that Matt posted from Ian World like a week before the. Oh, this was for Amphibia's first year anniversary, but also season 2 was like coming like up pretty shortly at the time. It's like the planners like entering Utopia or like entering the like coming to the gates of Utopia. I wish I had like I would love to like print out like that first shot and just like hang it on my wall, like on my wall. You know, I'll actually kind of look into that after. But no, but uh yeah, I mentioned the promos, I mentioned the trailer. Impact mentioned Marcy being like hidden from us for so long and
Should we talk about the intro?
yeah, we did get an intro update where I think the only shot was like Sasha kind of like Anne's like sword. She has the blue sword, and then like Sasha's like lunging at her from above, and Marcy's
Marcy's
in the
holding the box.
Marcy's in the like in the back, like in the background, all ominous.
Uh, do you know what animation studio did that shot? Like, do you know if they had that in-house animated? Because I know it was not. They like had new animation, and it was pretty clear it was
No,
upscaled from the old intro, like
no,
more frame rate.
it was by the people who did like an anime. Let me look this up. Um, I know my keyboard's
It's the
probably
best.
being picked up in the mic, but it's fine. Amphibia season 2, new intro.
It's the best intro though. I'll say that right now.
I agree.
Yeah, like like season one is like it's not too different from season one, but I feel like the added
Just Sword
addition of
Clash,
like
yeah.
yeah, of like and Sasha's clash because like it's and Sasha are gonna fight again, but you don't really know when that's gonna happen. Or it could have been like it didn't seem like a retelling of their fight in reunion. So like you knew that's gonna happen eventually, and we're gonna meet Marcy. That's just set up right at the start of this season, right? So and just the animation's like much cleaner. So and then like I'll talk my talk in season 3 intro later, but this is definitely the best one, especially animation wise.
I'm checking the wiki because it should say it somewhere. I can't find it.
Dang.
Unlucky.
But I know it's like an anime studio that did it. It wasn't like I know Samron did I think most of the main credits, but like that one new scene was done by oh well. I'll look for a Matt tweet later, but we can kind of we can kind of get into the like beginning of like the first couple of episodes, the Newtopia arc, not Newtopia arc, the road trip arc, and this kind of covers episodes 1 to episode 5. I kind of consider episode 6 to be kind of the transition with Marcy the Gates.
Yeah.
So these first 5
Mhm.
episodes, we had Handy Ann, Fort in the Road, the Ballad of Hoppedeye Planner, Ann Hunter, Truck Stop Polly, A Caravan Named Desire, Quarler's Pass, Toad Catcher, Swamp Insensibility, Wax Museum. So I think before we get into Marcy the Gates, we'll get into like the Sasha stuff. But for now, I guess Pickle, what were your general thoughts on these like first couple of episodes?
I think that the like road trip arc kind of gets slept on a bunch because people always talk about
Preach.
Utopia and Marcy and stuff, but this was a solid batch of funny episodes. And sure, it's not necessarily moving as quickly into the Newtopia arc as I think a lot of people expected it to, but it's a solid batch of episodes on a rewatch, and I have to talk about Toadcatcher separately as just like one of my favorite episodes because Sasha
Yes, sir.
and some great plot setup for later. And also, I think Ann Hunter and Handy Ann are both worth pointing out as standouts. Handy Ann with the foreshadowing, and Ann Hunter as just being a whole wild card of an episode.
Preach.
All right, thank you, Pickle. Nick, what are your thoughts on these first 5 episodes?
Let's see. Shit.
Well,
These
Nick,
are good episodes.
well,
These
Nick,
are
before you
good-ass
before you
episodes.
start, thank you, Chuck. Yada. So they animated stuff like I'm just looking at their wiki page.
Oh boy, sorry.
Oh, they kind of do like a couple of like short. Okay, so it isn't an anime studio. Maybe I was mixing it up with something. But they do a lot of work for like Western animation. Okay. Sorry, Nick. What are your thoughts on
Oh yeah.
the road trip?
I mean, I was just gonna say. I mean, it's really. I mean, damn. Just a really good opener to the season all around because I feel like even by the first episode, you can just tell like the writing in the show's improved. Just like hands down improved. Like I feel like season 1, it's all around like a really good season. But I really feel like you can tell in certain episodes, you know what I mean? They're trying to stick to that formula of like introduce that problem, complications, and then give us a conclusion. It's like, you know what I mean? They have like those really consistent plot beats they got hit. But here, honestly, yeah, these episodes they really just felt even fresher, even more surprising, and just like really engaging by the get go. Like there's just like I feel like yeah, I feel like that's a word that really defines season two as a whole. Really just engaging because I feel like season one, I'm like, yo, it's comforting, it's nice. I'm like, I really enjoy these episodes, but then like something on season two, I feel like yeah, just the writing changed and just got you really hooked right in for each episode. So honestly, I really don't have anything special to say. I mean, I really liked all these episodes. I think like yeah, same with Pickle. Standouts are yeah, obviously gonna be like see how am I forgetting the name? You know the Sasha episode. I'm somehow forgetting the name. But
Toadcatcher.
yeah, Toadcatcher. Standouts, yeah, Toadcatcher, Handy Ann, what is it? See, I didn't rewatch Amphibia. There's Ann Hunter, right? Right, Ann Hunter, not Hunter Ann
Yep,
Hunter, Ann Hunter.
that's it.
I there's a forgot all the names, but yeah, those are all bangers. Everything's a banger, except for Truck Stop Polly. That's not a banger.
Get out, Nick. Get out. Leave. Leave.
He's right. Don't boo him. He's right.
All right. Thank you, Nick, for those opinions. Impact. What are your thoughts on
Those facts.
opinions? Impact. What are your thoughts on the road trip arc?
So I really like the road trip arc a lot. I think what it really does for Amphibia is that it allows the world to feel a lot more, much bigger than season one. This is kind of our slow introduction to the larger world and idea of Amphibia, and from a world building scale that kind of gives us a chance to like see everything kind of outside the valley and sort of how our characters are going to handle kind of this family road trip style, which is fun because I think it gives Anne like a role of being this like responsible big sister of the group that has to help take care of Spring and Polly's bullshit, right? So like I really like that. I like their dynamic in the road trip. I think the planters I think this is where I think the humor got so much better. Not to say season one's humor was bad; it was great. But what I'm saying is that, like, I feel like because the characters are always forced to interact with each other, like, you get a lot more standout moments between Anne and the Planters throughout this whole time. And I thought that was great. So I think having a slow introduction to like the rest of Amphibia is really fun. World building wise, it does a great job of setting up kind of the entire continent of the area. I think the Planters and Anne bounce off each other really well. And you get a lot of fun standout episodes here, like Caravan named Desire, I think is great. Ant Hunter's really fun. Andy Ann I really like too. That's a really solid opening episode. It does a good job of kind of like establishing the goal of the season and like the tone of where we're moving forward too, with in a pretty quick way. Like we established that major plot points are gonna show up, like with Marcy and stuff, and where I don't know. It's a simple way of starting the season and expanding the world. So I really like the trip to Utopia or the road trip arc. It's a great way of expanding the world. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a good segue. Honestly, Thumb's just gonna have to edit this out because he just left.
No, we're not editing
But
anything out. My thoughts on the road trip arc. So, like you guys mentioned, like Impact mentioned, now they're on the road trip. That kind of forces the cast to kind of stick together. So there's still like they still have like a presence in basically every episode. Um, I'm just looking at the episodes again. Um, like usually in season one, we kind of had like whatever characters are doing their thing. The rest of them would kind of like go off screen. Mostly Hop Hop and Polly in season one, but at least in season two, it felt like they had more to do. Like especially during the road trip arc. Um,
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the whole family felt like, because eventually, like wherever the flagon goes, they're going. So they all kind of like are stuck together basically, and that does occasionally get on everyone's nerves. Like you have you have uh you have like Ballad of Hoppity Planner, like sorry, For the Road. That's where kind of Sprig and Hop Hop have their little like feud. Not Sprig and Hop Hop, but basically all the kids in Hop Hop. Truck Stop Polly. It's Polly versus the rest of the group. Um, Cordler's Pass. It's the kid like the Polly and Sprig versus Ann and Hop Hop kind of like the not conflict, but like the typical like road trip irritations that happen when like you're all like in a very like enclosed space for so long. Like everyone's eventually gonna start driving each other nuts.
Yeah. I think like I would say what Coiler's Path is, it's definitely it's a little less, I would say, Anne Hop Pop versus Sprig and Polly. I would say it's just more Sprig and Polly and Anne Hop Pop are just tied with their bullshit and just
Yeah.
bail them out the cart and, and tell them to just do like a bunch of treacherous trials for like a whole 11 minutes. So, but like I think with the planters always being with each other, I think this is the best dynamic and the planters have had, to be honest. I think I'm willing to say that, yeah. Like I feel like at this point in the show, I felt like the writers are really able to know the characters really well. They're able to easily make them bounce off each other. That like I feel like in season one, the writers are kind of figuring the characters out. And sometimes like you'll have an episode where it's just Anne and Sprig without Polly or Hop Pop around, or you might have just like Anne and Hop Pop and then Sprig and Polly are around. They might cause some problems, but like really just be their time to shine. You could have a lot more solo outings, but it was still the family coming together. But here I felt like this was like a fun way of like not testing the family, but this was a great way of kind of having them like bounce off each other dynamically. You couldn't do this in season one. I think season two is like I think the most fun the planters are to me. I feel like it's the point where they're the most what am I willing to say nuance? Yeah, I think this is the more probably the most nuanced relationship Anna's had with the planters in the show thus far. So it's yeah, and I think like this will expand upon later when we go to like after the rain and stuff and things like that. But this is like a fun way to kind of get them all to just force to bounce off one another. It's a fun dynamic that I think, yeah, I love that a lot.
Yeah, like these like yeah, like I don't know if I haven't thought about it too much about like what section of the show would have my favorite like planter relationships. But I would say season 2 kind of it does feel like it's expanding on like the relationships between these characters like uh Ballad of Hoppity Planner that kind of has Anne giving advice to Hop Hop and a caravan named Desire kind of like follows up not follows up but kind of gives us some like returning like backstory on Hop Hop about his like dreams of being an actor. Like
Yeah,
season 1 never really addressed it. It was just kind of something in the background, and then season 2 is where they kind of like put it at the forefront. Um,
that episode's also fucking hilarious.
I
That
think
entire episode's great.
since this is like a retrospective, we should probably go back to Handy Ann because we got or Handy Ann and Fort in the Road because Ann versus Beast. Ann's eyes glowed very briefly, and we had people like speculating if it was like an animation error or something. But then once again, typical Amphibia fashion, it's like rule of three, where season two premiere, you have Anne's eyes glow again, and it's like there's no like it's very clear this time.
Yeah, there's no question.
Hmm.
And for the
And
road, oh, go ahead and Pickle.
that also kind of like magic in Amphibia was kind of very background mysticy type stuff where it's like, is this really going to be huge? Like, other than Bazaar and in Wally, it was kind of like magic played a very background role, and you never really felt like it was kind of unclear how much it was going to tie into the main plot. And then like Handy Ann, the eye glow right in your face is like, oh, okay. It becomes a little less of a question mark.
Yeah, it's something the audience should pay attention to more, which I'm gonna see throughout this whole season. So yeah,
Yeah, and like Pickle said, magic was kind of like in the background, and then on the flip side, in Fort in the Road, like Amphibia's like Fort in the Road. For those of you who like at the time, it was kind of like a game changer. Once we found out like Amphibia was like this was like a post. We were kind of referring to it as like a post apocalyptic, just because of there's technology. Now, knowing what we know now, it's not really the case. But like, just the idea like all this like technology was kind of like from the past, and it's kind of like we were just kind of seeing it resurface again with Robo. Like that was kind of like mind blowing for everyone because we were kind of assuming this was just like not just Amphibia was more like a medieval setting, but then like just the factory underground that kind of like changed everything, and everyone could kind of tell that. I forgot to mention we also had another poster before the season started. This was the one where we had we saw Yunan and Andreas and Olivia for the first time, and we got like the guest star, the list of guest stars in the Variety article. Um, and we also had Frobo like in the very like bottom corner of that like really large poster, and that like drove everyone nuts because this was, we didn't even know Yunan's name at the time. We just saw her with her claws, and we'll kind of get into like Olivia later once we get to the Utopia arc.
yeah. It was interesting that the season kind of threw that at you right at the start. You know what I mean? Like it, because again, like the world building of the show was the idea is to expand it, to kind of give the audience questions of like, whoa, like why are there robot factories in Amphibia in a world that was like pastoral, like that. I don't know, like I liked that the season started with intrigue and mystery. That's kind of like a
Hmm.
fun thing of this whole season, of
No, like, God, yeah,
like
no, you're right. You're right. Jesus, yeah.
yeah, like of like, oh, like what are the robots about? What are they doing? Or like, what is Marcy's like plan with Andreas? What are they gonna do? Or what's with the the pitcher in the basement? What's Andreas's plan? Like, there's season two is the season of mysteries. Like, it's the season of the unknown. And what creates tension throughout the season is not knowing like what's gonna happen next, what's with everything, what are characters' motivations. You're not given that information. So like it's or characters not knowing information that we know as the audience too, but you're still wondering like what is this, what's going through this character's head, what's their goal. It's an interesting way of adding tension to Amphibia because I think like I don't know, like I think season two out of all the seasons for me, I think handles tension the best. I think I'm willing to say that. Yeah, yeah. I think like I might be going to 2B talk a little bit, but like it's definitely because we're afraid of the unknown. We don't know what could happen or what things are 100% about yet, but that's like the fun of season 2 is the discovery of everything. So, yeah.
Thank you, Impact.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Pickle.
Oh, I was just agreeing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, I think this has just been something I've been thinking about for a long time. But I feel like, yeah, just where you bring up Impact, because I feel like with storytelling, like obviously what the story is about, like that's very important, but also just how you tell that story. I feel like that's what really starts making it like a story much more interesting. And I feel like where I'm going with this, I feel like just the more I think about it, I feel like I can confidently say I do feel like season 2 probably is Amphibia's best written season overall, just because
Yeah. Yeah.
obviously just yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah.
like when it comes to how strong they made their, I mean like God, one of the simplest principles of writing, man, it's literally just setup and payoff. Like this is absolutely like the season of setup and payoff. Like this is just how they tease everything and bring it all into like one massive 24-minute episode by the end of the season. That really is incredible because because they were balancing so many things and they executed it so well. I mean, there's a reason why like I don't know, True Colors is just so oh actually not I'm not gonna go into Tubi, but y'all know what I mean. This
Yeah.
had an
Yeah.
incredibly solid setup. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. You can definitely tell the writers were like they took
They're
off the
cooking.
training wheels
Yeah.
now.
Nah, yeah, they're like Rock Lee dropping the weights, like yeah, like
Yeah.
they're straight up.
And
Yeah, unfortunately, you guys won't know that reference. Go watch Naruto. Like, watch
I know
Naruto
what you
if you
mean.
want
I
to
know.
know. Good. I'm gonna say that to the viewers too. Watch Naruto Part One. Watch part of Shippuden, and then stop after you finish the pain arc. That's all I'll say.
all right, thank you, Nick. I probably won't watch Naruto, but
Nah, you're gonna watch Naruto.
but
No, keep going.
I'm trying. I don't want to get into minor plot details, but in uh in a streetcar named sorry, not streetcar named Desire. That's I'm thinking about the actual like play that title is based on. A caravan named Desire. Um, Renee she mentions the line "Every dream has its price,"
Ah,
and that gets carried over to Barrel's Warhammer. But like, there's not much to talk about there. It's just that it was like casually brought up there, and then brought up again later. It's such a like a hard hitting line.
yeah. And like, oh man,
Yeah, I can't we can't like
I'll save that. I'll save that. That's a 2B thing. That's a 2B thing. I'll save it.
I mean it's even a 3B thing.
Yeah,
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 it's
yeah.
an everything thing.
It's a whole theme
It's
of
a
the
thing.
show, Like it's a whole theme of the show that like doesn't get talked about too much in the community. I feel like everyone talks about change. Like, the theme is change. Like there are more themes in Amphibia beyond change, but yeah, that's one of the bigger ones.
Oh, Ann Hunter was a all the
You know,
promos we got of Ann
keep
Hunter were
fixing,
like were Anne's
keep
flashback,
fixing.
like not Anne's flashback, Anne's like imagination of her being all cool with the glowing blue arrow. Like those were the only clips. Like those clips kind of like made us think it was gonna be this like crazy episode. And even Matt's promo for Ann Hunter was like Anne like kind of bloody, like getting ready to fight. And then the actual episode is like the ant hunting sorry the planter hunting dance. That's just like I don't know what to talk about now. It's just something that again reoccurs in the future, and it's just great looking back now. um Coiler's Pass, all right. Loud. I just love this episode. Kind of felt like like a an upgrade to Civil War because like this time Polly and Sprig very
Really?
very quickly are on the same page again, like are working together. Even though we do get some conflict like later on in the episode, but it made me wish we got more like little musical numbers or songs because like that little song with like Spring and Polly just singing was so cute. But then just
Also, introductions to the alms. Oh, sorry.
but then
Introduction
it
to the
ends
alms.
so abruptly.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Impact mentioned, like this is where we first get the Olms, and it's like we like I think at the time we didn't think too hard about it, but
Yeah.
I would, out of like all the like one-off characters, I wouldn't have guessed that the Olms would be a recurring thing, or at nearly as plot like vital as they were.
yeah, like
It's interesting that we get so much like. Oh man, like I guess technically everything about ancient Amphibia besides the core were essentially hinted at in this half of the season, right? We got like the ancient tech with the robot. We
mhm.
had the alms. We had Andreas's friends. The only thing we didn't know was the core. But like until we get to first temple, but even though we don't know what that is. But like, like I guess everything is like and like then we have the Planter family hunting dance with like that sets up Leave too, and like shit. Damn. 2A set up so much when I think about it. Like fuck. Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, Corler's Pass. That was I think that was kind of like my one of my standout. Actually, I think I can't choose. Battle Hoppidai planners right there. Like, um, Swamp and Sensibility though. I think that's kind of like it's a very solid episode, but people don't really talk about it. But I wouldn't call it
Yeah.
underrated. But it has a lot of callbacks with like this is kind of like a sequel to Wally and Ann,
Yeah.
and it kind of gives us like I think is this our first town? No, we had
Well, we had
Eddyburg.
Bittyburg.
Yeah,
Bittyburg. Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, Wally's backstory. Um, I think it's kind of implied that Wally's family not only kind of like profits off of like the foot floss, but also like boom shrooms because they have basically like a field of boom shrooms growing in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
isn't
was
it? And
that's
later on, like season 3B, don't they like buy munitions from Wally's
Yeah,
family, or get them at least? I don't know if they buy them.
yeah. Yeah, there's a whole like Spivey's all about that. That's I don't know. I find it funny that like Wally's family is doing like black market deals or whatever in Amphibia. I don't know. That's great.
and then we have like I would argue like the road trip arc concludes in Wax Museum, and like I'm gonna be real with you. I kind of just want to brush past the Gravity Falls content.
Aw.
What?
No, like I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, it's just like it's great. Oh, this, but like okay, the Skip Man,
Yeah, the Skip Man.
like
All the
that.
theorizing.
Yeah, all the theorizing.
We
Because
thought
we
that there was like other humans who had been to Amphibia before.
and like once we knew it wasn't Marcy's, it was like a huge like what the f like
Yeah, I assumed it wasn't any of the girls is because like I feel like if the girls like would know each other's stuff, You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
if yeah, like and it was in Anne says like specifically this is like old as hell. So it's like he doesn't say it exactly like that, but you know. But like so it was someone who was definitely much older than the girls. It's just like that's I don't know. The Skip Man is so interesting. Like the payoff it has, which is like I don't know. It's an interesting little device, to say the least.
And I do think character-wise, it was kind of interesting to see like Anne needing to be rescued because usually it's like Anne rescuing the planners or like I kind of liked how like it's the planners who kind of like bail Anne out of this one, and then it kind of like ends with them like looking at the horizon. I don't know. I just that kind of gave me the vibe
Only
that like
good
the
scene that episode. Only good scene that episode. Only good scene.
Nah,
No, it's a good episode.
nah.
I mean, if you want to get the more like context about like our thoughts of the episodes, like for all of these episodes, like be sure to kind of like check out the past like episode episode discussions where we kind of well, we went way more in depth, but like I think Wax Museum was still a great episode, but not for everyone.
When I think the thing what I do want to mention is like the part where the planters save Anne. I guess I never thought about it that way because like the first episode they pretty much do save Anne, right? And like even like episodes like I'm trying to think of when the planters saved Anne. It's not like the entire family usually. Like in Bizarre, pretty much Pop saves Anne, but like in kind of a reverse kind of way where like he's the forget the name the guy
The Wrecker.
how dressed the
Yeah.
Wrecker. There we go. Yeah, so like and the first episode Sprig saves Anne from like the mob or whatever and like protects her. So I guess I never thought about that because like Hot Till You Drop like going a little bit season 3 like emphasizes like the planters saving Anne all the time, but like I guess when that flashback happened, I couldn't really think of any episodes like off the top of my head of like the planters saving Anne from like not paying attention. If anything, that sounds like a Marcy thing.
Usually, I think the planters were equally responsible for whatever dumb stuff that they had gotten themselves into.
Yeah, but like, yeah, I don't know. This is interesting to think about.
But yeah, I think we can move on to like the next part of our retrospective. I think we can go into the Sasha stuff. So while all this is happening, you kind of like have like Sasha and Grime on their own little side quest, and we get their introduction to Yunnan and how Sasha's feeling after reunion, and the whole status of like their whole status as fugitives. Um, I think Nick and I were gonna go out and get a beer while Impact and Pickle kind of took over this one.
Calling us out, huh?
No, no, it's fine. You
In
guys are
fact,
you,
you want to
you
go
guys are
first?
the experts. Um, so I guess Pickle, what are your general thoughts on like this new
Okay.
status quo?
I would say the first thing you notice, the biggest shift is Grimes' character and the relationship between Sasha and Grimes. Because previously it had very much been their allies who are kind of mutually agreeing to not hate each other because they both are manipulative and know they can find value in each other. Toadcatcher is the first time we see them working together as more of a team, and well, as more of like a team by choice. Like they're clearly like caring for each other even at the start of this episode before they do any like big oh actually you're like the only you're the only friend I have left, so please don't die thing. They like there's a clear like difference. Grimes Grimes very much like complaining to Sasha like a trusted friend, and also in a pretty obvious slump that Sasha is willing to support him through, even when she's being very like, teenage. It's not like I'm doing this because I care about you or anything. She's like, she's doing it for more than just Grime can help me do X and Y. And it also sets up. It's also a great job of not just setting up character relationships for the future, but setting up future points of Sasha's arc, both super big plot related stuff and also Percy and Braddock's like kind of being tossed to the side and not as much of a focus of Grime and Sasha anymore. Not that they were honestly ever really given the respect they deserved.
Yeah.
And of course, it sets up Sasha's villain role in season 2 as take over Newtopia.
Right. Thank you, Pickle. And Impact, like, I guess how would you compare like Sasha? Like, where do you think Sasha is right now compared to like what she was doing in season 3?
Okay. So I think so to me, Sasha's arc, I believe Sasha's arc isn't really about not taking power. I believe Sasha's arc is about learning to let go of the past. And I think what's interesting, because Sasha's fundamental problem as a character is that she cannot let go of the past dynamic and relationship she had with Anne and Marcy, right? She cannot let go of who they were before as people. Sasha believes that Anne is this spineless, weak person who always needs her protection all the time, right? And like, I'm not calling Anne like a bad, like, worthless or anything. I'm just saying that like she was a little, she needed a backbone, right? And Sasha was always her backbone, and to her, that's how the relationship always was. That's how Anne always used to be. In So at this point, Sasha is trying to apply that lesson of learning to let go of the past by ignoring the past, pretending like that didn't happen. Union didn't happen, whatever. Anne was wrong, blah, blah, blah. She's ignoring the emotion and the problem of the situation. And compared to season 3, like, season 3 is where Sasha starts to change because she's actually taking that theme of her arc, but expressing it in a healthier way. By turning point, right? Like, Sasha has lost everything. She's lost Marcy, she's lost Anne. And at that point in her story, Sasha learns she can't ignore the past to grow as a person, and she can't just keep trying to use control to maintain it. She must accept it and embrace it. She has to realize, she goes into the house, right, reads the journal, and she doesn't ignore it. She doesn't let it hold her back. She embraces the past and moves forward to the future. And that's where 3B comes in, right? So to me, Sasha's at this awkward, like, in between of her arc where, like, she's trying to learn her lesson for her in her story, but she fundamentally doesn't know how to do it yet. She's trying to ignore the past instead of accept it and move on and realize that the past doesn't define the present or the future. It's simply just this thing that exists, and it doesn't define her, and it doesn't define Anne and Marcy either. And it doesn't mean to ignore it and not take responsibility, like here. It means to accept it as a past of who she was as a person and move forward. So I think this is like this awkward in between of her arc where she doesn't really know how to learn the lesson from Union. And like, yeah, it's a really different point in her journey. So yeah, it's a weird like because season 2 is that weird in between 1 and 3 where like the characters are slowly transitioning to like their bigger arcs in 3. So like that's why I would say Sasha's at in her arc right now. That awkward teenage adolescence where she doesn't know how to handle her emotions well. So yeah.
All right, thank you, Impact. Like, yeah, I kind of saw like Toadcatcher. what I kind of noticed is that like Sasha kind of starts off like directionless, and then like usually by the end of like these segments, like in season 2 and season 3, like her first episode of the season, like she has a goal to work towards. And even in Prison Break as well, it's like starts off directionless, has to fight something, and then has like a clear goal
Yeah,
by
because
the
like
end.
I think like with Sasha, her goal was. Oh, sorry, I thought I cut
No,
you
no,
off.
no, I finished my point.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said. Okay, okay. So like, yeah, like I think it's because like Sasha's main goal at the start of Prison Break is to get her friends, find a way out of this frog world, right? But at least that's what she says. But really, what Sasha wants is to bring back the status quo, right? To bring back the status quo and bring things back to normal. Because in the past, right, Sasha used to be the top dog of the friendship. Her goal is ultimately to maintain the status quo where Anne and Marcy are codependent of her to make decisions and to protect them, that she's always in charge, right? That like that's her goal in Prison Break. Very start. Like and then reunion happens and like her entire mindset shatters. Anne's this completely different person who's like standing up to her and like has a backbone and like is actually saying no. Like, oh my gosh, like for Sasha, this is terrible. Oh no. Anne's like growing as a person, like and that's a very toxic mindset, right? But Sasha doesn't realize that the status quo previously hurt the people she cared about, and her trying to maintain that wasn't healthy. But like it's I think she's like aimless in Toadcatcher because like what like last time she tried to maintain the status quo, Sasha and like spat in her face. Like what the heck? She doesn't know what to do. Like that was her whole goal at the start of the show was to like maintain the status quo. But now Anne's a different person. Like what? Like in her flawed logic, like it she doesn't know what to do next. And eventually, with Grime like being like, "Let's take over Amphibia," Sasha eventually at the end of this episode doubles down on the belief that like, no, Anne was wrong, I was right, and I'm just gonna take over Amphibia and I'm gonna find the girls and I'm gonna bring the status quo how it used to be. She doubles down on her want of power in order to stop Anne from being the one to like not need her anymore. So it's which is like again really toxic bad mindset, right? But it's because I think well explore this more in I think the dinner does a great job of exploring Sasha too, but like it's I think it makes perfect sense that Sasha is aimless because she must realize the goal that she wants to achieve is ultimately not good. Her one at the start of the show is bad. Trying to maintain the status quo of this long-term relationship is not healthy because the previous status quo was terrible. It hurt Anne, it hurt Marcy, and like it's not worth maintaining. So it's yeah, it's interesting to say aimless there because ultimately her goal is to realize that that goal she was trying to achieve shouldn't be a goal to maintain in the first place. So
All right, thank you, Impact. So now we can get into the beginning of the Utopia arc, which is kind of its own thing because it's the introduction of Marcy. And like we meet her and she's a gamer. I don't know, it's like the first thing I used to describe her. But
Wow,
like
so relatable.
she's a very like lovable like nerd and like right when you meet her, it's like I get it. I get it, Matt and crew. Like this is why you waited. This is why she didn't need a season to like introduce her character. We're like it's like that flashback of Anne like showing like Anne describing Marcy to Sprague or the flashback like describing Marcy to us. It's like Yeah, I understand her character very very clearly, or at least that's what I thought I did. But yeah, like the planners, like they get to Utopia, and it does feel very. I think I have a thought about kind of like the Utopia arc and Marcy's introduction in general, but I'll save it for later. I guess, Nick, what are your how are you feeling about Marcy at the gates?
Okay, well, let me make sure I'm not lagging. Let me make sure I'm not lagging. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, perfect, perfect. Oh, Marcy the Gates. Yeah, that's an episode that I don't want to say it has a forgotten legacy, but like I do think we ended up having like events later on in the fandom that just sort of you know just it just ended up being bigger, because the bigger the fandom, the bigger the outcry. But like, yeah, I think with Marcy the Gates, I feel like that was really just like the first big fandom event, and like it just made the episode all the more special. When it finally dropped. And actually, okay, now I just need to talk about the quality. I mean, I know this special to say here, man. I'm like running dry, but like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really like the episode. It's a really easy one to rewatch. The crew went all out introducing Marcy, making us just instantly find her lovable. Like yeah, I remember back then. It was, I'm not gonna lie, low key it was my favorite episode when I first saw it. Like I just felt, I was like, all right, this is my favorite one. I was like, because they just did everything so well that I loved it on a first watch. Honestly, I'm sorry that I don't have anything really special to say here, but like, yeah, all around really good episode.
Do you remember the Lord Have Mercy hashtag?
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
like
They
basically
yeah.
they
like
got
That was
us.
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah,
like Matt and the crew were
yeah,
just like posting like
yeah. That was awesome.
teasers and not fan art, crew art of Marcy, just to like hype up Marcy at the gates. Um,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead,
they
Pickle.
they cho- apparently they chose that hashtag specifically to do a little bit of foreshadowing to the fandom right under our noses of certain season 2 endings. Apparently, they wanted to go with Ides. They were thinking of going with Ides of Mars at one point too.
Ides of Mars?
Really? Like Ides of Marcy.
Like for the
Yeah, like Ides of
hashtag.
Mars.
Oh.
For settling debts in
Okay.
Rome. Oh shit.
Yeah,
uh, those writers.
Yeah, they're a little crazy.
But like, I don't know what to say about Marcy. Like, for this retrospective, it kind of like it's been kind of like I don't want to say it's been like analyzed very well with how like Marcy's like introduction and like leading up to the stuff later on in season two. I guess
I
going.
will say that.
Oh, go ahead, Pickle.
Go ahead.
No,
Sorry,
no, no, no.
finish your
It's fine.
statement
No,
before
it's
I.
fine. It's fine because like the point I'm gonna make kind of like applies to the rest of the Utopia arc, and I wasn't. It can be saved for later. Go ahead, Pickle.
All right, I will say that this episode does a great job of because like season 2A is very much a setup of Marcy, like a building up all of her most positive characteristics, and her introduction itself, Marcy at the Gates, does like the best job of this of any of those episodes because it is her episode. I really think that because of the nature of her arc and how she has such a massive betrayal at the end of the season, she needs to be built up really effectively in order for us to take it and still love her as a character and not immediately be like, okay, this is a villain, well, you don't like her anymore. And I think that they did a great job of her of making her very relatable to at least the like fandom audience. Like she's like clumsy and just a very like adorable, like doesn't really know what's going on, like a sweetheart of a character. And I remember that she even got some criticism of being like too like Mary Sue ish, which
Wait,
to be fair, her name is Marcy Wu,
Oh.
but I'm not sure if that was purposeful or not.
Who knows?
I kind of hope it
Who
was because that'd
knows?
be really funny.
Maybe.
I mean,
That'd
I
be
never
really
thought
funny.
about it that way until now. Like,
Yeah.
I
I've seen so many people.
uh,
Yeah, that was a crazy. It was weird. I swear, fandoms always sniff their noses around places they don't belong in, because I know, because I know why you bring that up. I know why you bring that up, because that was a crazy time looking back. That was a crazy time. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about that if we want us to, but like that was crazy. That was crazy.
nah, we don't need to talk about that.
Crazy.
I think I think for some people who were kind of like, there were some people who were definitely like Sprig in this episode, where it's like, where's your skeletons, bro? And then even Disney TVA Twitter was like, they had Backstabber and they crossed that out. It's like, man,
Oh, I just got that. I just got that. Oh no.
I love Sprig's reaction. Like, I don't want to go too much into like the episode details, but it's just that the planners have already like met one of Anne's friends, so it's just like the hype, like them meeting the other one. It's like they like they don't know what to expect. Like, I just love that little talk where the planners like, I think it's like Sprig's still kind of sour, and then like Hop Pop and Polly are kind of like having that little talk with him, like be nice. um,
Yeah.
yeah, Marcy is so interesting because when she jumps into the show, like what's the word? Like we've had this perception of the friend group for a while. Like what's great about Anne being a protagonist is that we get a lot more of like a grounded worldview of their relationship, of like the trio's relationship. Where like with Sasha, like the toxicity is super obvious, right? Like we know that like Sasha's kind of an asshole and this friendship sucks. But Marcy's like this interesting mystery to me when she first showed up, because like obviously like when I was watching it I was like, oh, I'm expecting kind of the same thing, maybe from like a larger scale. Maybe Marcy's like super manipulative, like she can mind control people. That's how manipulative she is, something over the top and crazy. So like obviously I didn't really think that, but still like the idea of having like a bigger darker friend was interesting. I thought was going to happen, but no, we didn't get that. We got someone a bit more lighter, happier, and like more chipper. And I think like when I was watching it, I was kind of with Sprig, but also wondering like, wait, but if Marcy's like that, then like, is the only problem Sasha in the friend group? Like, why does Anne have such a low opinion of herself based upon this relationship and Marcy's there? Like, what's going on with that? That's a little weird. So I don't know. Like to me, like Marcy doesn't add tension because she's talked about as the good friend, right? To Anne until we slowly reveal more and more about the character. But like there is always like a kind of this air of mystery to her where like I'm wondering like, wait, if Anne and Marcy are good, it's like, is it just Sasha? Is she the only issue? So I don't know. I always found that kind of interesting with Marcy's like addition to the relationship because it made it more complicated. It made it more morally like, what's the word? Ambiguous? Is that the right word? I'll go with that.
That's a
Like
good word.
it, yeah, like it's great. You don't there isn't exactly a good guy and a bad guy anymore. It's not like Anne is like the good one and Sasha and Marcy are the bad ones. Now there's like this complicated third friend to the mix where you're like, now the friendship, this is officially where like I think the girls' friendship becomes a lot more gray, that you can't talk about it in black and white. So yeah,
Yeah,
you can't just put
absolutely.
one problem on just one of the friends. It's a three-way problem with their friendship in general.
Yeah, and especially when like
Especially,
they have that talk near the end, like Marcy and Anne, just about like what they're going to do without Sasha, and it's like they got to find her, and like Marcy's still kind of like a because we're still getting used to Marcy not being like we're still getting used to Marcy being a character because like you said, Impact, like very early on, like just like Marcy looking smug in like the first episode of the show, kind of like set up a lot of like um I don't want to say misconception because we didn't really have anything to go off of, but like the idea of what we thought Marcy was going to be was like vastly different to what we got. So yeah, things got like a
definitely.
lot more gray for everyone who kind of like assumed they knew how things were gonna play out. Um, and this episode is where we got to hear King Andrius for the first time, and like looking back at it now, like our friend Princess Cthulhu PC, he brought up how like in Marcy at the Gates, he's kind of just talking like ominously, but now that we know about the core, it's like, oh, so he was talking to like the core at this time.
I wonder if that was the case, like from a writing perspective, like, because like, then why does Andreas go to the core in the first temple? Like, if he's always communicating with it through the crown, you know
So
what
we
I
can
mean?
see
Like,
it. So we can see it creepily open all its eyes.
yeah, for the audience.
And
I don't
like,
know. Like, I
yeah, maybe it
hmm.
wasn't even intentional in the scene. Maybe they just like, yeah, maybe it was just like they just wanted Andrews to like be ominous, but like you could kind of like very easily like write it, like you could interpret, like you could look back at it now and kind of think like, oh, like anytime Andrews is like just talking to himself, it's like maybe.
Yeah, yeah, that works. That works because Olivia and Yunan has like that weird, like, like I won't. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. You're right. It's a good point. It's a good
And I know Nick, like, well, for the Newtopia arc, just like Polly wears the crown later, nothing happens. But like, just the
Yeah,
idea
no,
that,
yeah. Yeah, that always makes me laugh. That always makes me laugh. Like just the fact that she had that much power on top of her head and she had no idea. No idea. Also, it's
but
crazy. Andrews, honestly, it must be nice for Andrews though, just be able to take off that crown and just relax. My God, just like he's able to just to sit down and like not have his thoughts invaded by his father and like his entire lineage. Like it's like,
oh, and that first, like, I guess we can kind of go into the Newtopia arc now. But like, they have the scavenger hunt, they meet Andreas, and like, Andreas is this jolly guy, and like, I love how it's still like even after everything, like after the reveal in True Colors, like Andreas is like this is still Andreas's personality. It's not like
yeah,
it is still an act, but it's still him.
yeah. Because I think like yeah, yeah. I was gonna add more to it, but I feel like yeah, that's pretty much accurate. Like even then, like with Andreas, like I don't know. At least to me, like what makes Andreas just fun as a character is that like what's the word? Like Marcy and Andreas both kind of have like obviously they both have ulterior motives, but they have like this sense of like you don't know it yet with Marcy. Like you don't know like there's a sense of like sadness to the character until later on, right? When we get to like TC and beginning of the end. But like they're both Andreas and Marcy are kind of interesting because their stories are told in reverse. So we're only seeing like we're seeing the ramifications of their motivations and thought processes before we get to know what makes them tick as people. With Andreas, like the question is like, oh, like what's making him like what's his plan with the box, blah blah blah. But with Marcy, we don't know that she has an ulterior motive. We're not like we do know, but like there's also that question of her too of whether or not what she wants to do with the box. I don't know. It's interesting that like both of those characters have their stories like and motivations only told to us in reverse. And Marcy fundamentally as a character, like what's the word? Like she's recontextualized a lot in the next season, but like I guess there's just like a difference of thought depending on like when you when you first watch the show and you rewatch the show. Because I feel like with Sasha and Anne, like you're seeing how their progression like slowly changes throughout the show. But with Marcy and Andreas, you're getting like a very different view of these characters once the show is completed. Like it's like you're watching a different show a little bit. Like Andreas is not like too fundamentally different, but there's like this sense of like you know there's something darker underneath of both Andreas and Marcy as you're rewatching it and kind of retrospecting throughout the season. So I always found that interesting.
Yeah, and it was nice
Even
that.
while
Oh, go ahead, Pickle.
even while watching it for like the first time, like I suppose it very much depends on what sort of theories you have of the character. But I remember always thinking that I always remember that I was pretty sure something was going to go down with her character and there was more to her. So kind of coming at it from like the what is going to happen with like what is that deeper thing behind her character is a very interesting way to like experience her, both as like, oh, she's so sweet and lovable and this is great to watch and I want so many good things for her, and at the same time like what's really going on here.
Yeah, because I guess like season two has I mentioned it before, like with a sense of tension, but like again, like this sense of the unknown, like don't know what they're planning. You don't know Andreas and Marcy's motivations yet. And even in like when we get the true colors, like not even fully with Marcy and Andreas, right? They're like revealed like to be true, but like we don't know enough about them till like the next season. So like it's no, it's a word like I love that tension of season two. I like that tension of what is their motivation? What's gonna happen? Like what's their plan? Like it's a great like again, season two is like the best I think does the best with like tension, which is weird because like it's not like the tonally darkest. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you have two colors, but like it's not season two is not that dark. You know what I mean? Like compared to like the next season or the previous one, it's like pretty lighthearted throughout most of it. So, but it's interesting that tension can be kept in the show without having to have like angst. You know what I mean? Like it sets up the angst. You know, so
Yeah, and I mean, we did have Hopping Mall that last minute, but that's.
oh yeah,
I guess we can get into like the Utopia arc now. Like we kind of like get to the characters explore Utopia, get to meet a bunch of like bunch of characters. Um, so this is. I'm just looking at the episodes. Scavenger Hunt, the planters check in, Lost in Utopia, Sprig gets schooled, Little Frog Town, Hopping Mall, the sleepover to end all sleepovers, A Day at the Aquarium. So how do I describe this? So it's like it's kind of like a holding pattern. Like they're like it's the planners are just waiting for Marcy and Andrews to kind of like do a bit more research now that the box is they know the box isn't completely charged. Um, I mean, for those of you who like didn't notice, it's like the gems were grayed out, and that's something Andrews immediately like called out when he saw the photo. Um, and we still do get a little bit of like story elements thrown in, like Lost in Utopia kind of had like a quick scene of like Marcy and Andreas and Sleepover to End All Sleepovers and Day of the Queer. Like Sleepover to End All Sleepovers, that had a lot of like little like background elements that we can kind of like list off soon. Um, I guess yeah, Impact. We can kind of talk about just the like not minor plot elements, but kind of like the stuff that like popped up here and there, like um you mentioned earlier the like leaf and barrel stuff,
Yeah,
and then
and
also
the
basically
shadow
that whole
pit.
chase scene in Sleepover to End All Sleepovers. Um, actually, I know we'll kind of like we might talk more about this, but I guess what do you guys think of the Nick? What did you think about like the Utopia townies?
I honestly, I mean, it's hard to say because I feel like they. Well, honestly, no, it's not hard to say. I think they were just good for what they were, right? Like they were just a part of that quick, nice experience they got out of Utopia, right? And honestly, there just isn't much to say about them because who do we have? We have like Gertie, um, Priscilla, right? Yeah, I didn't really watch the show, guys. I'm fumbling with the names, but like I don't know. I feel like they worked for the nice type stories they provided because darn, it feels so hard to talk to them right now because I know we talked about like the Earth counties before, and it's like I so desperately want to bring them up right now, but like yeah, I think when it comes to Utopia, I think they just worked right. I feel like there wasn't any. I don't think any of them were too stand out. They just had something they had to do for each episode. You know, whether or not that was like causing some trouble for Anne and the gang or just forming a bond with them. I think like the crew did everything they had to. So that's pretty much all I got.
Like out of all the Utopia townies, I think they weren't season one. We kind of spent more time with them, so we kind of like got to like we had more time to like love them, and then season three had more like the townies they met like contributed to the plot like directly to like getting them back to Amphibia. And then like yeah, the townies the season two specifically like the Utopia townies, it's like they don't have as much of a presence compared to the other two seasons, which is fine. Um but yeah, I think Priscilla and Pearl had like the most like I think those two stood out the most to me just because of like the mother daughter thing.
Hmm.
And like
Yeah, and
how
how
like
that relates to like Dan.
yeah,
Yeah, and Sprig too, and just the entire thematic element of the episode. That was great.
I think I'm about the same way. Like I didn't dislike any of the townies, but I don't think I can say that any of them were like favorites that stood out either.
they're no Loggle.
Yeah, Yeah, because I always wonder in my head, I'm like, is that because of their appearance in Newtopia, or is that because they don't come back? Well, I can't say like two A doesn't come back. Obviously, it does, but like, what's the word? Like, I guess to me, like, I feel like the season one townies are stronger, even if they didn't come back in the third act. I feel like the I feel like even like the townies, just like characters in general, like from season one. I don't know. I feel like I remember them. I would remember them more than season two. I think I'm willing to say that. Like, yeah, like I feel like the one-off characters in there, like I what's the word? I remember them more. So like, and I'm not sure like with the Newtopia townies, like it's even hard for me to remember like some of their names. Like Gertie was like the nacho one, and then like Priscilla Tequila, there we go, and then like Bella, the whatever her name was, Bella.
I
So
would
like,
actually say that Bella was more standout. I would say at least partially due to the fact that she's had such a good voice actor.
yeah, that's fair. Huh? Yeah.
Depressed Mabel.
Oh my god, I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. Like, took me like my brain took 5 seconds to remember who Bella was. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I was like, who?
Yeah,
But
like I do think the season two townies were like even the ones who went on the road trip. Maybe it's because like with Wartwood, it was like more of like a community.
yeah, plus no, they could keep on pumping like little gags, little mums of them all throughout the season. I feel like, yeah, I guess yeah, that really is just the weakness of like a sort of
A big
adventure
city.
format. Yeah, big city, big city green. But, no, but that's just like I'm joking, I'm joking. Well, I'm joking. But yeah, that's just overall like the weakness of I don't know. I think just an adventure format like this because every time just one adventure that's done. Right, that's it. That's over. We're not gonna touch that again. I know Priscilla and like what's their daughter's name? I'm sorry, it's Penny,
Pearl.
right?
I don't know.
Is it Pearl? It's Penny. Is it Pearl?
Yes,
Uh,
it's Pearl.
Oh, Pearl. All right. Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure.
I know that.
I don't know
Yeah.
either.
God, Matt Brawley, I'm so sorry. But I'm
Lacking.
joking. I'm joking. But
Big fan.
where was I even? I was just gonna say, yeah, I know they got a cameo in like a Day of the Aquarium, but like, yeah, besides that, I feel like it's not like a bad take to say that like season one or season three, you just felt they're more memorable compared to them. Because again, I feel like yeah, these were just I don't know, just much more closed off stories.
I like Sal though. He was good. Like,
Oh,
but
Sal. Oh,
yeah,
Oh
Sal. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
he
Sal.
was good.
Yeah.
He
Sal.
had a good
He,
message.
Yeah, that
Like
was
he
a
had a
great
throughout
great
the whole
message.
message. Yeah.
show. Like, yeah, like his whole thing, like pretty much, man said the whole theme of the show. Like, so
Hey, yeah, my favorite part of season 2A is when Sal said the it can be the hardest thing.
I'm looking
but
at like Anne's like in the hardest thing where Anne kind of like talks about Amphibia's greatest treasure, and it shows like the people she's met
oh
and Percy and Braddock.
yeah.
Um,
They earned it. Okay, they earned it.
I
They
know,
did.
but
They did. They did.
I mean, yeah, they're there. Sal wasn't. I don't know how. Oh,
Oh,
Rip Sal, we never saw him. Newtopia got destroyed. We don't know what happened to him. Oh my god. Rest in peace.
but yeah, those are the townies, and
I do want to say like one thing. Like I think we're forgetting like Olivia. She was a nice addition too. We didn't know too much about her yet, but like we're introduced to her in Marcy at the Gates. Marcy and her have like good like like they have like a good partnership going on there, and then like we see her like doing like I don't even know like karate on the kids and sleeping on sleepover. So I don't want you know what I wouldn't even sure if I would call her a townie, right? Like I feel like she's kind of she's on her own league. You know what I
Yeah, I would
mean?
say
But
that.
she's you know
Yeah,
because Olivia and
Olivia's in
Yunan are
like
kind of in the same spot.
yeah, they're kind of yeah, both in like an odd spot where it's like they're reoccurring and like we don't really know too much about Olivia at this time. I think everyone thought she was like kind of like the secret villain just because of that
Really?
poster where she's like in the shadows.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
Nick knows what I'm because like in the Amphibia season 2 poster, it's like all the protagonists were in like the bright light, and then like the villains or the antagonists were kind of like the lighting on them was like a bit darker, and then Marcy's was kind of like I mean everyone kind of like had their own interpretation. I have no idea what I can't describe the lighting for her. It wasn't like dark or light or like I can't give an analysis based on that. But like for the other antagonists, it was like definitely it's like the lighting's like dim for them, so it's like oh villain.
It must be you.
But you
Well, you
know,
see, everyone on this side of the poster has one eye, so too soon.
no, no. But
It works. It works.
yeah, well, like Olivia, you know, she's a wine mom, and but yeah, like we didn't get too much with her and Olivia, with her and Marcy, but it's kind of like
Yeah.
the fandom kind of like assumed it was like a mother daughter relationship that we
Olivia and
didn't
you
really
didn't be like,
see.
no.
But at least it was kind of like addressed at the end of the show. But like
Yeah.
that's his own
Biggest
thing.
cope of the fandom. Biggest cope with the fandom, that's all I'm saying.
Marcy was just like, yeah, straight up, I didn't really know you guys ever, but I hope you have a nice life.
Yeah, no, for real. For real. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying, damn. But Olivia, I mean, I guess she was all right. She was all right. I'll admit, she didn't deserve that place she had on the poster. Like what was she thinking? What was she even thinking taking that? Like, I should have went to someone else, but nah. I mean, I like her. Yeah, that. I mean, I always when I think of Olivia, I always go back to that one moment in a sleepover and all sleepovers where she just beats up a group of a group of children, but like it was a funny moment.
Yeah, because like literally we learn eventually more about her. Like when we get Olivia and Yunan, I'll save it for that because I think I don't know, it's interesting with Olivia though because she doesn't show up like a lot throughout the show. You know what I mean? Like what's the word? Like she shows up a little bit in Utopia arc. Then we see her a little bit in True Colors, but she's not. She's kind of vibing. And then like we get her in Olivia Yunan, which is pretty much her episode. So like, but I never heard anyone like complain about their screen time. Like complain about her screen time. I guess I'll save it to Olivia Yunan. I don't know. I always found that interesting. I never heard any complaints about that. Everyone was pretty content with like where Olivia and eventually like Yunan end up. I'll probably save it for season 3.
I know which season 2A townies show up later on. The three field analysts. Sorry, the three like
Triple B.
triple B. That's what they're called. Yeah,
Oh
they
yeah,
get
there's
little
triple B.
their
Oh
part in there.
yeah.
They were pretty. They were fun. They were fun. Fun.
Yeah, because like it's interest it's interesting that they come back to like build robots for
And
Andreas. Yeah, that was the neat thing to add, like to still have Triple B around, like still working for Andreas, like because I always assumed like during that time it was like
Andrews
only
versus the
robots
world.
were working for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was just him. Like and like Olivia and Unam were like around, like to
Yeah.
call once in a while. I didn't think we had Triple B like would ever come back, but it was a nice surprise in FLX to see them
Yeah.
again. So
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure this is nitpicking, but I think I think it would have been pretty cool just to really, because Andrews. I mean, let's be honest, he was just hanging out in his throne. I'm like honestly looking back, it's pretty crazy how Andrews just honestly that is one. I don't know if that's like a coincidence, if it was like intentional, but it is pretty cool how honestly he never left his castle until like what beginning of the end and all in and the hardest thing. Yeah,
yeah,
just like literally this last 3 episodes, like he was just the man in the castle. But I'll say though, I think I think I don't know. Yeah, just go back to my point. I don't know if this is ever nitpick, but like just I think I would have liked just not really understanding how Utopia was working politically, but I don't. We know there were like different. There are definitely different, higher up newts working in Amphibia, doing stuff like I keep forgetting the names. You know that one woman in Total Redemption? I forgot her name. But
Oh,
I forget her
um,
name. Jacinda, I think is
yeah,
her
yeah,
something
name.
like
just
that.
Cinda. I think it was just Cinda. But yeah, I think just understanding just how these factions work under Andreas, because I mean, let's be honest, they're probably all doing the legwork. Like, it seems like Andreas would just get a report, then just say like, "Oh, cool, thanks, keep going," and like they really took care of things. I think like yeah, Triple B ending up serving. I always felt like it's such an interesting point because it's like at that point it kind of just implies like either you're with or against Andreas, and those three, even so they're getting abused in the most hilarious of ways. They sided with him. So yeah, I think yeah, just I know they're just using what was the most important and like personal to the character, so I can't blame them. But I think like yeah, just something like that would have just added some. I feel like that would have just added some nice spice to what was going on from Vivia thematically, right? Because it was just like it was again, it was just being broken up by this ancient order from the past. And I think just like yeah, having these people who are looking yeah, no, just for genuine progress and change, fighting against this ancient order, or at least just I don't know, just something that I feel like I don't know. I
Wait,
love conflict. I love conflict. I'm sorry, I'm a writer. I love conflict. I just what I mean. It would have just been awesome to get more of that stuff. So I'm saying.
wait, Nick, do you mean like I'm a little confused. So like, do you mean like you wanted you wanted to see how more of Newtopia worked in the case of how it affected the entire continent? Is that what you mean?
Um, I think it's more like I think I just mean like just where are the political figures? Because I feel like they're definitely because I mean you have a general, you have
Oh,
Jacinda, I
okay.
mean I just mean like where are they? Because like Triple B, they seem like they're pretty high up there, right? Like they help run Newtopia's defenses and stuff, but like I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it just how did the other people running Newtopia react? Because it couldn't because Anders was just chilling. There's no way he was doing it alone, right? Like there had to be more people trying to decide stuff. So I think like just understanding where those people stood would have just been as awesome as like the other art. Yeah, it would have been just as awesome as Anne traveling all across Amphibia. Meeting old
I
friends.
I
It
I think that's. Oh, Pico, you go, you go.
it uh it seemed to me like the toes were kind of running everything for him, and then eventually they realized like, why are we doing this in the first place? Because I mean, Andreas was never a real like Andreas was never a really good ruler. He just kind of kept Newtopia looking pretty, and then let the rest of Amphibia rot.
Yeah,
But
like
I
I
think
mean, he
I
I
think
kept
Nick was talking about the politics just within Utopia, right?
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize I was being so confusing about this. Let me just let me. Yeah, I think I'm just look. Think about like this. Think about this. Think about this. Think about it. Let's say there's a bunch of different people helping run Newtopia, and then all of a sudden, your boss, who hasn't really acted like a boss in years, is like, all right, I'm gonna I'm gonna take this. You know what I mean, right? Like, you know what I'm getting at. He was like, I'm gonna like
Take this
rip
castle.
our place of business and bring it up into the sky. I'm like, you have tons of people who have been helping him run this kingdom who have to now choose how they're going to react like to that. Like, I think seeing that would have been awesome because it wasn't just Andrews running the kingdom. Like, there were people basically doing this job for him. I think there would have been people reacting to that. I just think I just would have loved seeing that. Like the people, like, because come on, we all know there's other political figures in Utopia, right? Like we didn't see them, but like it's implied that they're there. I think just being able to actually see that stuff in canon would have been awesome.
Yeah, I think that's definitely like
Yeah,
season 3 talk,
I
like, or season 2B
I think
maybe.
yeah,
Oh,
because
actually, no,
I
you're
guess
right. Oh, shoot, you're right. Actually, you're right. You're right. No, I got ahead of myself.
No, no worries. Like, I guess we should start talking about like a date at the aquarium and sleepover. Like
yeah,
sleepover, like that was just like lore after lore after lore, like, and like Impact mentioned, like the season of like Discovery. It's like we're basically introduced to like things from like the other worlds that Amphibia's been like that has Amphibia's conquered, like the Moss Man and the Shadowfish, and like I mean, now that we know about the core, like you can kind of see why like these species, like I think Andrews does later on in the show, like mention like, oh, like we studied the Mossman and the Shadowfish to like make the core, and then you have like stuff like the Mossman, like kind of like can just grow stuff, and then
Yeah.
uh, and then the Shadowfish
the
are kind
Moss
of
Man is a
like
little weird.
they're like immortal basically, or I don't know what state of living they are in.
Yeah, because I think the with the core, because I always saw the Moss Men were like, so I guess how I always interpreted it with it was like, I'm trying to not get too much in the season to be talk, but like I feel like with the Mossmen, I always interpreted that was more obviously like the healing tank, right? That was like what that was about.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, like that's what I got because like they even changed the like the liquid to be green and stuff with Marcy. So it was like I always assumed that the Newts were always trying to figure out immortality, and the Mossmen were the closest thing they had to it before the Shadowfish. You know, yeah.
And it did confirm that the Mossman is like not from Amphibia,
Yeah.
and like that kind of made us like rethink like what like rewatch Wally and Ann. It's like, oh, okay, so it's like this thing like they're giving off this like otherworldly vibe in Wally and Ann, and like then we find out that's actually true.
Yeah. And it really provides context for why this very like out of the ordinary episode had just been slapped into season 1. And it's like really built on that intrigue we were talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's so interesting how Sleepover, like, it's it both does a really good job of setting up the rest of the series, but like also like I don't know, it's an interesting point of like setting up Anne and Marcy meeting Sasha again. But then it also does a good job of like having a fun conflict in their story and then and then also just like yeah, like setting up the lore and the ideas of the show, and it all happens in like this whole running sequence takes up what like very small amount of time. I don't know, like 2 minutes of them just running through. Not even probably, right? And it's like it's
Yeah.
interesting how it's not even fully explored, like entirely. Like, yeah, like we have like the shadowfish in the crypt, but like you don't exactly know how it works specifically. How did the shadowfish lead to the core? You don't really know. You know what I mean? Like it's a little confusing of how that connects together, which I'll save that later because I got a Darcy take. But like,
Ooh.
like no, it's not that hot, but like it's 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 an interesting one where it's a little vague where like how the shadowfish work, but yeah, like I can kind of get it. Like oh, it's I guess they live forever and they can transfer their something. I don't know. It's a little weird, but yeah.
All right, thank you, Impact. And we've already talked about it before, but Sleepover and Aquarium, they kind of both are like the series mid-season, like the series mid-season, or and they are fantastic episodes, and I think they are like the best mid-season finale of the
Hands down.
show, which kind of
Hands
makes
down.
sense, yeah, since it's like
Huh.
the
It's like,
middle of the show.
yeah, it's like not only do we just have two good episodes back to back, it's also just it literally sets up the rest of the series. Like it aged that well. It aged that well.
And
Like,
like it kind of like wraps up like the first half of the series.
oh, true, actually,
Yeah,
true,
because
yeah,
like A Day at the
true on
Aquarium
that,
like
yeah.
is like kind of like a season one like love fest.
Oh, actually, no, you are 100% right about that. Actually, yeah, that is a very interesting way to look at it because I think God, wrapping up season one because it's like it really because I think at that point, yeah, that was when we really because you're right. I think that really is a true test of how far they came because I don't think before then we ever really asked the question, okay, what if Anne and the Planters actually separate? Like, what will that separation look like? Because back again, remember, I mean, I think I brought this up before, but like back then, early on, before Anne officially became a planter, the idea was to have her just leave when the mountains thawed out. So, yeah, that episode, it really is just that finally answering that question that was just sort of subtly built up. They love each other. They love each other, and them separating is going to be painful.
And like especially after like this first half of the season where like the planners are even like along the road trip they were like close to each other like an elastic band. It's like they're all like kind of like being pulled together. And then like you have the road trip end and you have them sightseeing on the trip in Utopia, and then now all of a sudden it's like, oh, like this isn't going to last forever. And the mid-season finale kind of like, I don't want to say cheats, but like it's like Anne kind of like gets her, like the planners kind of like win and they get to be together just like a little bit longer. I don't want to like repeat the point I made like in the previous like in the episode discussion where it's like this little like victory is like kind of like the cost of like Marcy, and honestly
For
like
the goal,
the whole show in
worth it.
general.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
because like Marcy's now like emotionally like
That's
easily
crazy.
to
Yeah,
manipulate, and
it's crazy.
Yeah.
No, it's a little crazy, Yeah. No, I was about to get pulled into a whole varsity discussion, but I was like,
yeah,
it's
it's
so crazy.
I try not to like
It's crazy.
go
Yeah,
too much
it's.
into it, but
I
like
was like, real quick. I was just like, it's crazy how they brought her in just like demolish any expectations you ever had for this show. I'm like, bravo, bravo, well done. But you just get his back, just get his back. Like,
It's like, oh, you
yeah,
thought
no,
Marcy's gonna be part of the main cast? See ya.
yeah, seriously, seriously, shit, crazy. But okay,
I
but
mean, they
just
bring
to
her
get back to
back
your
like
point though,
4
Yeah,
just to
episodes
get back
later.
to your
yeah, I
point
know.
though, just to get back to
Yeah,
your
like
point though,
it
just
doesn't
just
feel exactly like that. I feel like it's
but
like
but
a bit different because it's like
I mean, by the time we didn't know.
like oh, I guess that's true. Yeah. Huh.
yeah,
I
I
know.
guess
I
like
didn't
yeah.
get that vibe.
I guess like
The aquarium.
I think
actually
it was no,
I'll
it was
save
just more
my
like everything that happened in season. I was like really referring to everything that happened in season 3 too, just like what you expected out
Oh,
of her, what we actually got. But okay, yeah, but just to get back to what Tom was saying, yeah, it really is. Man. Yeah, no, again, because it really the Planters relationship, it really just feels powerful because it just goes against what everyone else in the series stands for. Pretty much every major antagonist that defines the series, like they're the foundation of their relationship, accepting new love and life into God damn it, why did I say that? Because I was saying new love and life into your life. But like just accepting something new into your life. Like that just goes against what a lot of these characters stood for. And I think that's part of what Amphibia was founded on. Like it's I don't know, it's a really wondrous thing. And I feel like even if it was like never directly acknowledged besides like God, that one badass line where Grime is like our very way of life is threatened. But like yeah, no, it really is a very fascinating way to view them because I think, yeah, it really just shows how well structured this series is again. Because, yeah, just the basic decision of the planters going, oh, no, actually, we want to spend just a little more time for each other. That just like you, you doomed this 13-year-old girl to be manipulated by this king. It's like crazy. That's just
I
crazy. That's just crazy.
I would say like it. It's so interesting because what I liked about I want to get into Marcy a little bit. I guess I could say like that's kind of the fun tragedy of Marsan though to me because they're not really save that. I'll save that for 2B. I'll save that for True
but like
Colors.
you kind of talk about
Go
Marcy
ahead.
now because like we're kind of like at the end of the season, and then like
Oh,
I guess
all right.
once we kind of talk about Marcy and Andrews, we'll go into like our like closing thoughts. But yeah, go ahead, Impact.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. I was gonna say like the fun part of Marsan to me was when coming to the fandom and looking back at like art from season 2, Marsan is like oh my god, like Marcy's the good friend. Like we can like they're this great relationship and Sasha's the bad one, right? That's what I noticed when coming into fan art and stuff. And that's like no like jab. It's not what I'm doing. But what I'm saying is that like what I liked about Marsan a little bit is that like fun relationship with them is a bit fake, if that makes sense. Like Marcy and Anne are never 100% on the same page. Marcy like Anne wants to stay with the planters, stay with them for as long as possible, and isn't really interested. She wants to go home. That's her goal, right? Of doing these temples is to find a way back home and whatnot. And she wants to stay with the planters. She doesn't want to be with Marcy. But Marcy thinks like, oh, like Anne has grown as a person. Anne has developed herself, and she'll want to stick with me, right? Like she came all the way here just to find me. Like she'll want to stick with me, right? And no, she doesn't. She doesn't want to do that. Anne wants to stay with the planters, and it's a tragic thing. But like Marcy and Anne are not on the same page. They still care about each other. They still love each other, but it's like Anne wants to stay, chooses her family over the friendship she had with Sasha and Marcy. And with Marcy, it's a little more complicated because with Sasha, like, oh yeah, right, Sasha's the bitch, like,
Yeah,
all right,
let's go.
but like, but like,
Real.
but with Marcy, it's like there's a legitimate debate of whether Anne should stick with her or be with the planters, right? And I think like for Anne, she's not really thinking about what that means. Like, oh, it's like she'll be with Marcy later or whatever. Like it'll be a-okay because she doesn't know Marcy's gonna move away, right? But like she also doesn't know the distance Marcy always felt with the relationship explained in the beginning of the end, right? She doesn't get what's going through Marcy's head. She's just their relationship has gotten better because of Anne's growth throughout the series, right? So I don't know, there's like this fun like tragedy to Marsan that adds to Marcy's arc later in the show. How they're like they still care about each other, but they are never one to one. They're keeping secrets from each other. Their motivations are very different. They come together because of their love for Amphibia, but their love of Amphibia also splits them apart. You know, like it's Marsan has that tragic texture to it that I always liked. Like, and I don't want to criticize. I'm not criticizing fan work. I always miss that. I like that addition to the show, and I feel like to me, like usually, I notice a lot of fandom doesn't keep that. Marsan is not like super happy or whatever. Like it's it's there's this texture of darkness and gray to it that the show is constantly ignoring. Like Marcy, right? Marcy would always ignore the problematic nature of the relationship until eventually it all like bites her at the end of the show, right? So like it's I don't know, it's an interesting texture to the relationship I think a day at the aquarium brings that eventually like will get more context to you later in the show. So just wanted to draw it out.
Yeah, definitely with like Anne's kind of lack of attention to what Marcy really wants and needs from the relationship compared to what she may think that Marcy wants from her. Plus Marcy's lack of like self-advocation and actually like telling Anne that she's sad or is scared of moving and all those things is kind
Yeah.
of what drives them apart at that point in the show when they end up at odds with each other.
Yeah, because like Marcy like doesn't have the what's the word? Like Marcy doesn't want to admit that because if she admits that she's moving away, I think Anne could figure out like, oh, she knew the box was gonna send them there. Like it's not that hard to connect that dot. You know what I mean? Like if or maybe not, maybe. But like I feel like Anne would connect the dot, even if Marcy didn't say it. But like, it's interesting that Marcy is not taking responsibility for it, right? She's not taking responsibility for getting the box moving away, and that also makes her not want to admit to the girls like what she did and why she did it too. It's again fun texture. I like the tragedy in the relationship. I like that deepness to it. It's fun.
Thank you, Impact. And I think we can start to wrap up our thoughts on 2A. And I guess I would like to start where how I think 2A kind of accelerated kind of what I thought was going to happen in season at the beginning of the season. Even before we got any like promotional stuff, like I was expecting like this maybe like a season long journey or maybe like more than half a season just to get to Utopia. Just based on what we kind of saw in season 1. Um but we got to Utopia like much sooner. And I think it was done really well, and it kind of threw me off at the time. But looking at 2A through, I guess through Anne, I really liked how Anne definitely like felt like she grew compared to like season 1, like as a character. And then there's like still stuff for her to kind of like it felt like there were like new problems for her. I think very early on the road trip, like she was kind of like feeling like the planners were kind of like she started feeling like the guilt of like the planners kind of like going on this adventure with her, kind of like putting specifically with like their farming harvest, like putting that to the side to like focus on helping Anne. Like she started feeling the guilt of that, and that kind of led to like new problems compared to season one, where she was kind of just like being a brat. Here she was kind of being like guilty for stuff that she really didn't need to feel guilty about since like they're her family now. And
Hmm.
once they got to like once they got to Utopia and met Marcy, and kind of like we got to see kind of a similar dynamic of like Sasha wanting to look out for Anne, and then now we have like Anne wanting to look out for Marcy. You know, except this time we saw Anne grow in season one. So like here it's like we can see Anne kind of like very quickly adjust to like the new status quo. Um, and then when throughout the Utopia arc, it's like I mean, she's still silly and has fun, like, you know, Lost in Utopia. But, you know, we get that moment with Hopping Mall being like like much more mature about her like relationship with her mom. Um, and like Anne didn't really talk about her parents like too much in season one, but I think you know with like Leo Patai, but with Anne here, like you can kind of understand, like you can kind of see the growth and how she like got to that conclusion about like her like you know just like understanding her mom a bit better, even though we don't even like know Mrs. Boonchoy at this time. Um, yeah, I think that's all I have to say about 2A for now. Um, Pickle, what are your thoughts on 2A? Just any final thoughts?
Um, I think a lot of it is covered. I I still really like the setup of the intrigue in this part of the season, and I still think that season two is my favorite season. I don't think that season two A can top season two B for me, but I do not think that season two B could be what it was without the setup of season two A.
Not two ways
And I
peak,
also really
but
like how it does a great job of breaking the status quo that season one set and kind of expanding the world that we see our characters in. And I think that's most of my thoughts.
Thank you, Pickle. Impact. Final thoughts on 2A.
I think you said it really well. I think 2A was kind of the point in the show where like I 100% agree with you that the show was accelerating. Like like honest to God, I thought like yeah, we would meet we'd be at Utopia at the end of the season. Sasha would like get like one episode in half of it. And I don't know, like she'd like be destroying Utopia or something. I don't know. So like yeah, it season two was definitely the point where where the show was going to high gear, but it never felt like it was rushed. I never got that vibe out of season two. It felt like we were going at a quicker pace, but we were also expanding the world and idea of what Amphibia was about and sort of getting an idea of what everything was outside of the valley, getting intrigue of what the world could be or was before um, the modern age of Amphibia, and just so many questions, so many like things to discover. It felt like there was always something new to think about, kind of every episode, to be honest. Like even besides lore stuff, like character wise too. So I think like with Marcy and Anne and Andreas, it wasn't just about the mysteries; it was also about the characters. And I think 2A does this great job of finding that balancing act of giving us lore, but it's giving us lore because we're intrigued about what's going to happen to the characters and like what does that mean for the story moving forward? It's good lore. It's not just like world building for the sake of world building. It's world building, so it adds intrigue to the plot and to the motivations of who these characters are later on, right? So 2A is great. Like it's I think like with this retrospective, I've just gotten to start thinking like, man, this part of the show is huge. It is like it is so fundamental to like everything that happens in the entire series. It's crazy. And you don't know it. You don't know it when watching 2A, you know? Like you're watching it and you're like, "Oh, that's cool. It's robots. Oh, Marcy's cool. She's great." Or what's Andreas's plan? Or oh, I like Andreas. He's a good character. But like what is he trying to do? Like I don't know. Like it's it's interesting how much this pays off, but you don't think about it, you know? So yeah, I really like 2A. It is so critical to what makes this show work.
Thank you, Impact. And Nick, final thoughts in 2A.
Honestly, I mean, I already really enjoyed it. I feel like yeah, everything I've ever said about 2A I've already said. But yeah, I mean, I will admit, I feel like, God, just yeah. Your point about shit, I mean, God, I forgot what you said specifically about the planners, but just how much they shake things up in like a literal and thematic sense. Yeah, I feel like that just yeah, I don't know. I think yeah, at that point just made me appreciate this uh first half of the season even more. I'm with Impact and Pickle on that just being a banger. Honestly, now I'm like honestly, I don't know if I could say whether or not I think 2A or 2B is. You know what I mean? I don't know which one is stronger because I feel like I mean I
Ooh.
love both of them. I mean I don't know. We'll see. I won't lie. I won't lie. Like your funny point where you're like this movie episodes they're like and appreciating your journey in Amphibia. All right. Then
Yeah, I'm
another
I'm
episode
saving
with
I'm
you
saving
two.
that point for next time. Like I'm
All
gonna
right, nice. Yeah, it's Dang, I really just have nothing new to say. I mean, it's just a really good first half to the season. I mean, I always love I love road trip. I love road trip arcs. Like I love road trip stories. Like taking characters to different locations, having us meet new characters, and just have these crazy. I just have these crazy adventures in those new locations. Like I mean, this delivered. Like this absolutely delivered. Like I don't like I won't lie to you guys. Like when the whole Newtopia arc, just like the whole build up to it, like it was. I was like, I won't lie, it made me feel like a little kid again. It made me feel like a little kid again because like when I was a kid, I was just so blown away by all the sights and wonders of any cartoon or anime I saw. But like coming into this, I was thinking, man, I was like, how cool is this really going to be? Big deal. We're on a road trip. We're getting to Newtopia. I was yawning, right? But then just when we finally got there, like I didn't feel that excited about opening up a new chapter in this series for like the like a very long time. So like, yeah, I don't know. You rarely find those experiences of like Amphibia ended up being one of them. So I don't know. 2A is really good.
thank you, Nick. And that concludes this week's recording. Thanks guys so much for coming on, and next time we'll be going into 2B, the second half of season 2. Looking forward to that, and say goodbye, everyone.
Thank you
Peace,
so much.
everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
See you.